On tonight's summary of the Israel-Hamas War, Day 212. Hostage negotiations breaking down. The Hamas delegation has left Egypt without a conclusion. CIA director travels to Qatar and Israel to try to revive the deal. Newsflash from the last few moments. Israel has begun evacuating Palestinian civilians from the different areas of Rafah, leading up to the IDF invasion to the southern city. Barrage of 14 rockets fired from Rafah into Israel, 3 IDF soldiers killed and others badly injured. Substantial escalations between the IDF and Hezbollah, over 100 rockets and missiles fired by the organization targeting northern Israel. The IDF carried out airstrikes in Baalbek deep in northeast Lebanon. Leading up to the Rafah invasion and the U.S. pressure revolving this, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke on the eve of Holocaust Memorial Day in Israel. He stated in one speech that during the Holocaust, many great international leaders abandoned the Jewish people, adding that if Israel has to stand alone, it will do so. Hello everyone, I'm Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the latest highlights from the Israel-Hamas War. It's currently the evening of May 5th, 2024 in the United States, the morning of May 6th, 2024 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, the negotiation rounds between Egypt and Hamas delegation in Cairo concluded today without firm results. Conflicting reports emerged about this conclusion. The Wall Street Journal stated that Hamas demanded clear language and U.S. guarantees that Israel will not resume fighting during and after the truce before it gave its official response in the negotiations, while Al-Arabi al-Jadid reported that Hamas returned its answer to Egypt with open questions, which have been transferred to Israel for Israel to now give an answer to the negotiators. The Hamas movement officially put out a statement stating that the talks have concluded and the delegation returned to Doha, while Egypt now awaits Israel's response to the developments. Responding to the fact that the negotiations have effectively reached a stalemate, CIA Director William Barnes traveled to Qatar today in what was described as an emergency meeting with the Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed Athani, and he is then due to travel to Israel, where he will meet Prime Minister Netanyahu and the head of the Israeli Mossad, Dedi Barnea. Reports are that the United States is scrambling to try to save the negotiations as they are crashing. At this point, both sides seem to recognize that it is at least a stalemate, if not a complete breakdown of the negotiations. Amidst that, however, the Qatari Al-Arabi news site did report that Hamas delegation is due to return to Cairo on Tuesday to continue negotiations. However, it's important to add that while the Al-Arabi news site did put that out, no other news site has reported upon that. In Egypt, that was not reported, and Hamas did not report about that, so it is possible that they know something that a lot of other news agencies do not. It is also possible that they heard that information from somewhere, but that is not reliable because no one else is mentioning the continuation plan of the negotiations. Amidst this, the blame game is ongoing between Israel and Hamas regarding this breakdown in the negotiations. Hamas representative in Lebanon, Osama Hamdan, stated today that while the Hamas movement approached the negotiations with an open mind, quote, Israel only focused on the hostage exchange and not in the demands that Hamas presented. With this, he's echoing what Hamas has been saying for several weeks, that Hamas is steadfast about achieving a ceasefire and IDF withdrawal, and that Israel is constantly shifting what it is willing to give, but is only focusing on Palestinian prisoners and the hostage exchange, not on that outcome that Hamas is demanding. In turn, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu also put out a statement earlier in the day, stating that, quote, contrary to what is being reported, Hamas is the one who is foiling the deal, and he later added that while Israel has shown flexibility, Hamas is steadfast in its extreme demands of ending the war and a complete IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, which Israel will not allow. Later in the day, New York Times quoted senior Israeli officials, however, stating that Prime Minister Netanyahu's statements on Saturday, specifically that Israel will invade Rafah whether the deal is signed or not, contributed greatly to Hamas's position and to the deal collapsing. According to the report, the Israeli officials stated that the sides were close to a deal. However, that statement made Hamas insist on more assurances and on changing the language such that Israel would be bound much more to a ceasefire, leading to the current stalemate and breakdown of negotiations. Right now, despite that report in Al-Arabi al-Jadid, there is no official statement regarding if and when negotiations are going to resume. As it stands right now, the CIA director is trying to convince both sides, i.e. Qatar to pressure Hamas, and then he is coming himself to pressure Israel to try to resume the negotiations. However, right now, it appears to be a complete stalemate. Moving on to the Gaza Strip, there was an unusual barrage of 14 rockets and mortars that were fired from the areas of Rafah towards the Kerem Shalom region in Israel near the Kerem Shalom crossing, targeting an area where the IDF has been congregating leading up to the Rafah invasion. 3 IDF soldiers were killed in this barrage and 7 more were injured, a few of them with severe wounds. The Kerem Shalom crossing was also closed as a result of this attack. Al-Qassam brigades claimed responsibility, stating that they were targeting IDF outposts in the area. Regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip, in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, there were airstrikes that were reported in the Jabalia refugee camp in the last 24 hours, with the IDF stating that it attacked 3 armed Hamas operatives. In addition, Al-Qassam claimed a sniper attack from the Tel El-Halwa region, targeting IDF troops in the northern parts of the Netzarim corridor, publishing a video seen here, displaying the sniper setting up and possibly managing to hit an IDF soldier. In the central parts of the Gaza Strip, the IDF and the Israeli Shabak carried out an attack against the Hamas command center that, according to the Israeli officials, was established within an UNRWA compound. The IDF stated that this was a central headquarters from which terror operations were being guided, as well as logistics of attacks and Hamas supply routes were being planned. The military added that it used precision weaponry to avoid collateral damage, and again that it struck the Hamas headquarters within an UNRWA compound. In addition to this, the Quds news channel, which is a Hamas affiliate in the Gaza Strip, stated that in a bombing that occurred today in the Al-Nuseirat refugee camp, a police station was attacked and 6 Palestinians were killed and several were injured. At this point, I could not confirm if they are referring to the same attack. The IDF and the Shabak did not state if the attack that they had carried out in the UNRWA compound was in the Al-Nuseirat refugee camp. It is possible that this is the same attack that the IDF and the Shabak are saying they targeted a Hamas headquarters, and in turn the Hamas news channel is saying that a police station was attacked. Possibly that is the same attack, possibly 2 different attacks. We may find out more about that in the coming days. Right now I'm reporting those 2 incidents as separate because I could not confirm if or if not it is the same incident. In addition, earlier in the day it was reported that Salah Jamil Muhammad Imad, who is a commander of the military logistics aid units in Hamas's Al-Bureij battalion, was assassinated in an airstrike. In a separate attack, it was also reported that several Nukhba fighters who took part on October 7th were also killed in the Al-Bureij refugee camp. All this is in the central parts of the Gaza Strip. In the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, several airstrikes were reported targeting the launching sites of the barrage that Hamas had carried out earlier in the day, which was reportedly some 350 meters away from the Rafah crossing and humanitarian zones. Other IDF airstrikes were also reported in the Ivana refugee camp in the southern parts of Rafah. According to reports, over 20 Palestinians were killed in those attacks. Other news related to the Gaza Strip, and specifically the southern parts of the Strip, amidst the ultimatum that Israel had given Hamas, stating that by the end of this week, either a deal has to be signed or the Rafah invasion is going to take place. Moments before recording this, news flashes came in stating that the IDF has begun issuing evacuation orders to Palestinian civilians in Rafah, ordering them to evacuate to the humanitarian zones that have been set up in Han Yunis as well as in the Al-Muassi refugee camp. Again, I'll state that this came in moments ago, so I do not know specifically which zones in Rafah are being evacuated, how many Palestinian civilians are included in this, what are the evacuation routes. Knowing the evacuation routes is going to help us know what the timetable that the IDF estimates is going to be for the evacuation. Are there many evacuation routes or only one road that they have to go through checkpoints? All these things we're going to learn in the coming days. However, this is the biggest indication that the IDF is in fact planning the Rafah invasion to begin at any moment, possibly in the coming days, possibly in the next week or 2. The United States originally estimated that it will take the IDF at least 3 weeks to evacuate Rafah. Either way, this is the first time that the IDF has begun actually operational procedures on the ground leading up to the Rafah invasion. Regarding casualties, 3 IDF soldiers reported killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 266. In addition, 3 IDF soldiers were injured in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 1,609. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip reported that 29 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of Palestinians killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 34,683. 78,018 Palestinians are reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. I remind everyone that those numbers include an estimated number of the IDF, stating that some 12,000 to 13,000 Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other armed operatives have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began. Moving on to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, the Kerem Shalom crossing was closed today following the rocket and mortar attacks that were carried out. In addition, other humanitarian news, UNRWA announced today that Israel has refused to allow the UNRWA director, Philip Lazzarini, to enter the Gaza Strip. This is the second time since the war began that Lazzarini's entrance has been blocked. Reportedly, he has not been able to get to the Gaza Strip, and he wanted to get there also to inspect the ongoing humanitarian situation, as well as issue orders to the different aid agencies with regards to the Rafah invasion. In addition to this, there were air paradropping missions that continued throughout the last 24 hours in the Gaza Strip. Reportedly, 94 containers were paradropped into the strip, specifically to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. In addition, while the crossings were closed today, the UN did distribute 233 different trucks within the Gaza Strip. These include food, water, and medical supplies. Specifically, over 60 trucks were also coordinated to enter the northern parts of the strip. A few reports from the West Bank in the last 24 hours. There was an attempted Palestinian attack that occurred in the old city of Jerusalem. A Palestinian woman was stopped for questioning by the Israeli police force and refused to remove her hands from her hijab before pulling out a knife and trying to stab police officers. According to reports, she was arrested and no one was injured. In addition, there was substantial IDF activity that was reported in different parts of the West Bank in the last 24 hours. Notable raids took place in the areas of Tubas, Hebron, Tulkarim, and Silwan in East Jerusalem. Confrontations reportedly erupted in the areas of Tubas between the IDF and different Palestinian factions in that area. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, the escalations from yesterday continued in the last 24 hours. There were 4 barrages amounting to over 100 rockets and anti-tank missiles that were fired by Hezbollah, targeting the different areas of northern Israel. Rockets specifically targeted the areas of the Upper Galilee, and there were direct hits in the areas of Kiryat Shmona, and other rockets towards Ramon Naftali, Iftach. There was a direct hit in Shtula, Shar Yeshuv, Kibbutz Dan, Snir, Margaliot, Tel Hai, as well as the surrounding areas. In addition, there was substantial damage that was done to infrastructure as a result of these different barrages. Hezbollah also claimed 7 border incidents throughout the day. El Mian reported that in one of the barrages, rockets managed to hit an IDF base in the Golan Heights and a fire broke out in that area. This was not reported by the IDF, so at this point El Mian is the only one that's reporting that. I cannot confirm if that is true or not. I will find out more about that and report about it in the coming days. Regarding IDF activity, following the different barrages, the IDF carried out substantial airstrikes throughout southern Lebanon as well as further north into Lebanon. Hezbollah structures and infrastructure were targeted in the areas of Marhaba, Ataibe, Kila village, and Al-Adaisa. Earlier in the day, attacks also targeted Hezbollah structures in the areas of Misr Jabal, as well as other Hezbollah targets in the areas of El Khiyam and Amat Mora. Artillery fire was also reported in the areas of Halata and Anakora. Later in the day, airstrikes were reported in Baalbek. This is the northeastern parts of Lebanon. In the past, attacks in Baalbek have specifically been part of these escalations. Usually what is targeted there is different Hezbollah Air Force units and different factories that are associated with Hezbollah drones and Hezbollah air defenses. Al Mian reported that 3 people were killed in the areas of Al-Safari in Baalbek, and that a building was also attacked in the Thalia region in that area in northeastern Lebanon. In addition to this, there was also escalations on the Syrian front. 2 missiles were fired from Syria, targeting areas in the Golan Heights. The IDF retaliated towards launching sites, and bombings were reported in the areas of Neve, west of Dara. Likely we'll see more retaliations against Syria. Usually what happens is there are rockets that are fired from Syria, then an IDF retaliation against the launching sites, and then, in the next 24 hours, more escalations with the IDF retaliating against other targets in Syria. However, if the Rafah invasion is brewing, it is possible the IDF will not escalate the situation in Syria. Remains to be seen. Some political news from the last 24 hours. On the eve of Holocaust Memorial Day in Israel, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu recorded the speech and later also gave a speech in the main ceremony in Israel. In both cases, he alluded heavily, and in some cases explicitly, to the international community's pressure during the war, and also to the pressure of the U.S. administration against Israel with regards to the Rafah invasion. In his recorded message, Netanyahu stated that during the Holocaust, many great leaders did not come to the aid of the Jewish people, and he quoted the Holocaust survivor he had met, who reportedly told him, "You cannot trust the Gentiles who make promises." He added that if we do not defend ourselves, no one will defend us, and if we need to stand alone, we will stand alone. In his speech later in Yad Vashem, that is the main Holocaust museum in Israel, Netanyahu chastised the ICC, the International Criminal Court, for contemplating arrest warrants against the Israeli leadership, and again added in English that no nation came to the help of the Jewish people in the Holocaust, and, quote, "Today I say to the leaders of the world, no amount of pressure, no decision by any international forum will stop Israel from defending itself. He then again repeated, if Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone, but we know we are not alone. Countless people around the world support our just cause. And I say to you that we will defeat our genocidal enemies. Never again is now. Other political news. The Israeli government authorized the shutting down of Al Jazeera's broadcasting in Israel today. This comes after months that Israel has passed a law that allows it to shut down international news agencies if they are deemed as threatening Israel's national security. After this, Israel's security forces had to give a report showing that Al Jazeera is in fact endangering Israel's national security. Then this was held up for several months, as the Israeli Mossad had said that shutting down Al Jazeera is going to anger Qatar, and Israel does not want to anger Qatar during negotiations. Despite that, today the government did vote unanimously to shut down Al Jazeera. Hours later, special police forces raided the Al Jazeera offices in Jerusalem, and Al Jazeera was removed from the different broadcasting networks in Israel. Again, I'll repeat that the biggest headline of today is the fact that Israel has begun ordering Palestinian civilians to evacuate the areas of Rafah to the areas of Khan Yunis and Al Muwasi. The report came in only several minutes before I recorded this, so we will learn more about what this means, the scale of the evacuation, and what is the pace of the evacuation. This will tell us a lot about what is going to happen with regards to the invasion. It is also very possible that this is part of a negotiating tactic that Israel is signaling it is going ahead with the Rafah invasion to try to mount more pressure on Hamas to come to the fold and actually sign a truce that will forestall this invasion at least. All this remains to be seen in the coming days. I will say here that tomorrow I am not going to put out a summary. I am giving a talk at my university titled 7 Months to the War, in which I'm giving a summary to the war. It is supposed to be recorded, so I will try to upload that by the evening. However, if there are major developments with regards to the Rafah invasion, I will put out a shorter summary just stating what those developments are. If you find these summaries important, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports come out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. That is my report for the last 24 hours. Thanks for watching.